Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Terrible Stories. I refused to give my inheritance money to my brother so he could buy a bigger house. When our father passed away last year, my brother Ethan and I each inherited a decent sum of money. It wasn't life-changing, not quit your job and live on a beach kind of money, but it was enough to be comfortable, pay off debts, invest, or finally do something we'd always wanted. Dad had been careful with his savings, and splitting it evenly between us was his final gesture of fairness. I had my own plans for the inheritance, nothing flashy, just responsible things. Paying off my student loans, building an emergency fund, maybe even putting a down payment on a small place of my own. I'd been renting for years and was tired of feeling like my home could be taken away at the whim of a landlord. Ethan, on the other hand, already owned a house, a perfectly fine 3-bedroom home in a quiet suburb, with a nice backyard and enough space for his wife, Mia, and their 2 kids. I assumed he'd use his inheritance for upgrades, maybe pay off his mortgage faster. But 2 months after Dad's funeral, Ethan called me with what he described as an exciting opportunity. His voice had that eager tone I remembered from childhood, when he'd come to me with big, usually unrealistic ideas, starting a backyard zoo, building a treehouse with running water, stuff like that. "There's this amazing house for sale," he said. 4 bedrooms, huge kitchen, finished basement, pool in the backyard. It's perfect for us. But there was always a but. "We're short on the down payment. If you chip in some of your inheritance, we could make it work." I froze. "You want me to give you my inheritance money?" I asked, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. "Not all of it," he said quickly. "Just enough to cover the gap. You don't even have to think of it as an investment. You could stay over whenever you want, have your own guest room." He sounded so casual, like it was the most logical thing in the world for me to part with a large chunk of money so he could have a slightly bigger house. I told him I'd think about it. In reality, my gut reaction was a hard no. But I knew Ethan. If I shut him down too fast, he'd act like I hadn't given him a fair shot. I hung up, sat at my kitchen table, and ran through the math in my head. Even if I gave him the money as a loan, what were the chances I'd see it back? Ethan was notorious for forgetting debts. When we were teenagers, I'd lend him 20 here, 50 there, and the repayment would come in the form of vague promises or, "I'll get you next time." This wasn't 50. This was the kind of money that could determine whether I had financial stability in the future. I called Mom that evening, hoping for some neutral advice. Instead, I got blindsided. "Oh, Ethan already mentioned it to me," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's such a lovely house. The kids would love the pool. And you're not even using your inheritance yet, right? You could help them out." That's when it hit me. Ethan had already laid the groundwork. He'd painted this as a generous, almost charitable thing for me to do. Mom was already on his side. I realized I was walking into one of those family situations where saying no wouldn't just disappoint Ethan, it would make me the villain. And yet, the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to give him the money. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying the conversation in my head. Every time I thought about giving Ethan the money, I felt this knot of anxiety in my stomach. It wasn't just about the cash. It was about the precedent it would set. If I gave in now, what would stop him from asking for more later? Bigger house today, new car tomorrow, unexpected home repairs next year. And with Mom already on his side, I could see myself getting cornered into becoming the family ATM. By the next morning, I had my answer. I called Ethan back, and before I could lose my nerve, I said, "I'm not going to give you any of my inheritance money." There was a pause on the other end. "You're serious?" His tone was somewhere between disbelief and offense. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have my own plans for it. I'm not in a position to fund a bigger house for you." "You're not funding it. You'd be helping," he shot back. "You have no kids, no mortgage. What do you even need that much money for right now?" The comment stung. It wasn't the first time he'd thrown my child-free lifestyle in my face, as if my life choices meant my money was somehow community property for the rest of the family. "That's not the point," I said. "Dad left us this money equally. What I do with my share is up to me. What you do with yours is up to you. Ethan sighed, a long, heavy sound that carried more judgment than words. You know, Dad would have wanted us to help each other out, he said finally. I clenched my jaw. Dad also wanted us to be responsible with money. I'm not giving you my inheritance so you can upgrade to a house with a pool. We ended the call on a cold note, and I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Mom called me again. I don't understand why you're being so stubborn, she said without even saying hello. Ethan is your brother. He's raising a family in a cramped house, and you're just sitting on money you're not even using. 3 bedrooms is not cramped, Mom, I replied, my patience wearing thin. And this isn't about me sitting on the money. I have my own financial goals. I'm not going to compromise my future because Ethan wants more square footage. She huffed like I was being selfish. It's not like he's asking for all of it. Just enough to help them secure the house. You could consider it a gift for the kids. There it was again, that subtle emotional manipulation. Make it about the kids. And suddenly saying no sounds heartless. I'm sorry, I said firmly. My answer is still no. Mom went quiet for a beat. Fine, but don't be surprised if Ethan feels hurt. Families are supposed to support each other. After she hung up, I just sat there staring at my phone. It was only the second round of this, and I could already tell they weren't going to let it go easily. I felt this creeping dread, the kind you get when you know a storm is coming and there's nowhere to hide. I had drawn the line, but now I had to hold it. It didn't take long for things to escalate. By the end of that week, I noticed something strange texts from my aunt, my cousin, even my grandmother, all vaguely hinting at how family is more important than money, and sometimes we have to make sacrifices for those we love. None of them directly mentioned Ethan or the house, but the timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. It was clear Ethan and Mom had started recruiting allies. The real blow came at Sunday dinner. I'd been dreading it, but skipping would have made me look guilty, and I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. I arrived at Mom's house trying to keep my face neutral. The moment I walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. Ethan was sitting at the table, arms crossed, his wife Melanie giving me a look like I'd just kicked a puppy. Mom greeted me with the kind of forced cheer that's somehow more hostile than outright anger. We sat down, and for about 5 minutes, there was small talk, until Ethan's eldest, a 6-year-old, piped up, Mommy said we can't have a yard to play in because Aunt My Name won't share her money. The room went silent. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I glanced at Melanie, whose smug expression told me this wasn't some innocent slip of the tongue. That's not true, I said calmly, though my pulse was spiking. Your parents already have a nice yard. They just want a bigger one. Ethan's jaw tightened. Wow. Really mature, dragging my kid into this. I'm not dragging anyone, I shot back. But maybe don't feed them a narrative that makes me the villain. Melanie jumped in then, voice dripping with indignation. We're just being honest with our children. We don't hide financial realities from them. I had to bite my tongue to stop from laughing. This wasn't about financial realities. This was about painting me into a corner, making me feel guilty enough to cave. The rest of dinner was an awkward mess. Every conversation somehow looped back to how hard it is to raise kids these days, and how much better it would be if the family could all pitch in. By dessert, I felt like I was being ambushed in slow motion. After everyone left the table, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. You could solve all of this tension with one decision, she said in a low voice. Why are you being so stubborn? Because it's my money, I replied, keeping my tone even, and I'm not responsible for buying Ethan a bigger house. She gave me a look that said I was both selfish and impossible to reason with. You'll regret this one day, she muttered before walking away. Driving home, I realized this wasn't going to blow over anytime soon. Ethan wasn't going to stop asking. Mom wasn't going to stop pushing, and now they'd turned it into a family-wide morality play where I was the antagonist. It wasn't just about saying no anymore. It was about surviving the fallout. The following Friday, I got a text from Ethan that started with, "We need to talk. This is your last chance to do the right thing." I stared at it for a full minute before replying with a simple, "About what?" even though I knew exactly what he meant. He called me instantly. No greeting, no small talk, just straight to the point. I found a house, he said. It's perfect. Big yard, good schools, close to mom. But we need to put in an offer within the week. So here's what's going to happen. You'll transfer me the inheritance money. I'll handle the paperwork, and we'll be done. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the sheer entitlement was absurd. Ethan, I've already told you. No, he cut me off sharply. You've told me you don't care about family. You've told me your money means more to you than your own niece and nephew having a decent home. That's not what I said, and you know it. He took a deep breath, his voice lowering into what I assume was meant to be a serious and reasonable tone. If you don't do this, I'm done with you. Completely. Don't expect me to help you with anything in the future. Don't expect to be part of my kids' lives. You'll have chosen money over blood, and I won't forgive that. I sat there stunned. This was my brother, someone I'd helped move 3 times, lent money to in college, which he never paid back, covered for when he messed up at work, and now he was essentially holding a relationship hostage. Ethan, I said slowly, you can't threaten me into giving you money. That's not how this works. He scoffed. Fine. I guess I know where we stand. And then he hung up. I thought maybe he was bluffing, but within days, it became clear he wasn't. He blocked me on social media. He didn't answer my texts. When I showed up at Mom's for Sunday dinner, his family was conspicuously absent. Mom barely looked at me. That night, I got a message from my cousin. Ethan says you're cutting yourself off from the family. Is that true? I typed back, no. I'm just not giving him my inheritance. But as I hit send, I realized that in his mind, they were the same thing. It was becoming a war, and I wasn't sure who would still be on my side when it was over. By the next week, the situation had escalated in ways I didn't think possible. My phone was a constant stream of notifications texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all weighing in on the inheritance drama as if they were part of a courtroom jury. Most were vague but pointed. Family should help family. It's just money. Don't you think the kids deserve better? It was clear Ethan had been working the phones, telling his version of the story to anyone who'd listen. In his narrative, I was the selfish younger sibling hoarding a windfall, while he, the hardworking father of 2, was struggling to give his kids a stable home. The reality that he already had a house, just not the one he wanted, was conveniently left out. At work, I found myself distracted, reading messages I shouldn't have even bothered opening. My Aunt Karen wrote, "If your father were alive, he'd be heartbroken to see you like this." That one stung more than I'd like to admit. When I called Mom to try and clarify things, she didn't exactly defend me. You have to understand, she said, her voice low. Ethan's under a lot of stress. The kids are growing, they need space. And houses aren't cheap these days. I understand that, I replied, but it's not my job to buy him a bigger house. Maybe not, she said carefully, but it wouldn't kill you to help. That's the thing, Mom, it would hurt me. A lot. This money isn't just lying around. It's my safety net, my plan for the future, and it's mine. She sighed heavily, the kind of sigh that said she'd already decided I was being difficult. Sometimes you have to put family first. Sometimes, I agreed, but not when family is using emotional blackmail. After that, things became icy between us. I still saw her, but it was awkward, her eyes darting to the phone every time it buzzed, as if she was waiting for news from Ethan. The final straw that week came when I was tagged in a vague public Facebook post by Ethan's wife. Some people think money matters more than family. Sad to see true colors. The comments section was filled with supportive messages, none from people who had asked for my side of the story. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a campaign, and I had officially been cast as the villain. 2 weeks after the initial blow-up, Ethan called me directly. No pleasantries, no small talk, just straight to the point. I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing, he said. Ethan, there's nothing wrong with the thing I've already done. I kept my inheritance. That's my right. You're not listening, he snapped. This isn't just about money. This is about family, about our parents' legacy. They'd want this for me. That's interesting, I said slowly, because Dad left that money to me, not to us, not to me. So maybe what he wanted was for me to decide how to use it. You're twisting it, Ethan growled. Dad always talked about wanting the family to stay close. This is driving us apart. That's not my doing, I said. You're the one turning this into an ultimatum. He paused and his tone shifted into something colder. If you don't help us get this house, I don't see how we can have a relationship going forward. And Mom agrees with me. The words hit me like a punch. Not because of the threat itself, but because I realized he wasn't bluffing. So that's it? You're going to cut me off unless I hand over tens of thousands of dollars? I'm not cutting you off, he said, his voice dripping with false reasonableness. I'm setting a boundary. If you can't be there for your family when it matters, then maybe you're not really family. My chest felt tight. If that's your definition of family, then I guess I'm not. The call ended with him saying, think about it. You have until Friday. For the next few days, I wrestled with the absurdity of it all. Friends I confided in were unanimous. Don't give him the money. But there was a part of me, small but persistent, that wondered if refusing meant I was closing a door forever. Friday came, and my phone lit up with Ethan's name. I didn't answer. Minutes later, a text arrived. I'll take that as your final answer. And just like that, my brother stopped speaking to me. What I didn't know then was that the silence was just the calm before a much bigger storm. It started subtly at first. I noticed fewer family members liking my posts on social media. Cousins who used to comment on every photo of my dog went quiet. My aunt stopped texting me random memes. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. People get busy, right? But then I got a message from my cousin Sarah. Hey, just so you know, Ethan's been telling people you're sitting on a ton of money while he and Emily are struggling to keep a roof over their kids' heads. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. That's not even true. They have a perfectly fine house. I know, Sarah wrote. But he's making it sound like you inherited way more than you did, and that you're hoarding it instead of helping family. Over the next few days, more tidbits trickled in from different corners of the family tree. Apparently, Ethan had told one person I was selfish and ungrateful toward our parents' legacy. To another, he implied I'd cut him off out of jealousy for his successful family life. It wasn't just gossip, it was a coordinated narrative. The worst blow came at our cousin Laura's birthday party. I decided to attend despite the tension, thinking maybe some face-to-face contact could smooth things over. But when I walked in, conversations literally stopped. A few people avoided eye contact entirely. My uncle barely mumbled hello before walking away. And then I overheard it, Ethan, talking in low, but not that low tones, to two other cousins. She got $30,000 and won't even help her own brother. Meanwhile, we're crammed into a tiny 3-bedroom with 3 kids. But sure, she needs to keep every penny for herself. That number was wrong. Dad had left me $15,000, not $30, but I knew correcting him would be pointless. This wasn't about accuracy, it was about painting me as the villain. When I confronted him later, his smirk was infuriating. I never said anything that wasn't true in spirit, he shrugged. People can make their own judgments. I realized in that moment he wasn't just angry, he wanted me punished socially. If he couldn't get my money, he'd take my reputation. And unfortunately, it was working. After the birthday party disaster, I stopped attending family events altogether. It wasn't worth the glares, the whispered side conversations, or the passive-aggressive jokes about how I should buy the next round since I was rolling in it. But pulling back only seemed to embolden Ethan. Within a month, I heard from Sarah again. This time, she told me he'd made a Facebook post that was clearly about me, without naming names. It read, "Some people inherit from their parents and choose to keep it all for themselves, even when their own family is in need. Sad how greed can destroy blood ties." The comment section was full of sympathy for him. One person wrote, "Wow, family should come first." And another said, "I can't imagine doing that to my brother." Ethan replied to each one, thanking them for understanding. I stared at the screen for a long time, my hands shaking before finally logging out. I thought about posting my side of the story, but it felt petty. The people who mattered to me already knew the truth. Or at least that's what I told myself, until I got a call from our mother. You know, you could have avoided all this drama if you had just helped him, she said without preamble. Mom, it wasn't a loan he wanted, it was a gift. Tens of thousands of dollars. Why is no one acknowledging that? Because, sweetheart, he has a family to think about. You're single. You don't need as much. There it was. The core assumption everyone was making, that my needs mattered less because I didn't have a spouse or kids. That my future plans, my financial security, my ability to weather emergencies were somehow less important than his immediate desire for a bigger house. That phone call flipped a switch in me. I realized that no matter what I said or did, Ethan would keep pushing the narrative until I either gave him the money or cut him out entirely. So I made a choice. I blocked him on every platform. I blocked his wife. I told Mom that if she wanted to keep bringing him up, I'd have to limit my conversations with her too. And then I started building a wall, not a petty one, but a self-protective one. I was done defending myself to people who had already decided I was guilty. It hurt. God, it hurt more than I expected. But for the first time since Dad died, I felt like I had control over the situation. Or so I thought, until Ethan found a new way to escalate things. It happened at the worst possible moment. I was at the grocery store on a quiet Sunday morning, halfway through loading my cart with vegetables, when I heard someone loudly say my name. I turned and saw Ethan, pushing a cart with his oldest kid sitting in the seat, grinning like this was some happy coincidence. Except his voice carried too much like he wanted everyone around to hear what he was about to say. Well, if it isn't my rich little sibling, he said, smiling, but with that razor edge to it. Us out spending all that inheritance money? My stomach dropped. I glanced around and saw a few curious shoppers, pretending not to listen. I'm just buying groceries, Ethan. What do you want? I kept my voice low, hoping to de-escalate. He leaned on his cart, acting casual. Oh, nothing. Just figured maybe now that you've had time to think about it, you might have come to your senses. I mean, my family's still crammed into a 2-bedroom, you know. My son's been sleeping in the living room. You could fix that for us. I felt my face heat up. We've been over this. My answer hasn't changed. That's when his kid maybe prompted, maybe just picking up on the tension, piped up. Why won't you help us? Daddy says you have lots of money. I wanted to sink into the floor. People were staring now, and Ethan had this smug look, like he'd just cornered me in a checkmate. You can tell your dad that grown-ups handle their own problems, I said, forcing my tone to stay even. And this conversation is over. I turned my cart and walked away, my heart pounding. But he wasn't done. He called after me, loud enough for the whole produce section to hear, "Guess family means nothing to you, huh?" I didn't look back. I made it to the self-checkout, paid as quickly as I could, and drove home shaking with a mix of anger and humiliation. That wasn't just a private argument anymore. He'd made it public, dragged his own kid into it, and tried to shame me in front of strangers. When I got home, I sat on the couch and realized something I'd been resisting for months. This wasn't just about money, this was about control. Ethan couldn't stand that I had the power to say no, and he was going to keep attacking me until he either got what he wanted or burned every bridge between us. And I was finally ready to choose the latter. The turning point came 2 weeks after the grocery store incident. I had been living in a constant low-level dread, waiting for the next ambush at work, at the gym, even at family gatherings. Then, my phone rang one Friday night, and it was my aunt, her voice tight. "Ethan just called me," she said without preamble. "He told me you've been hoarding your inheritance while your own nephew sleeps on a couch. He made it sound like you're heartless." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I'm not hoarding anything. I've been using the money to pay off debt, fix my house, and secure my future. I'm not responsible for buying Ethan a bigger house. He can't keep living beyond his means and expecting me to bail him out. There was a pause, then she sighed. I figured there was more to the story, just be careful. He's really working the family against you right now. That was it for me. I hung up and immediately sat down at my laptop. I wrote an email to my entire extended family, every aunt, uncle, cousin, even the family friends who'd been pulled into the drama. I laid it out clearly. The inheritance was my share, left to me specifically by our parents. Ethan had asked for a large sum to buy a bigger house. I said no. He retaliated by trying to shame me publicly and spread a one-sided story. I included examples: the ambush at the grocery store, the constant calls, the way he'd involved his kids. I ended it with this: I am done discussing this. I will not be giving Ethan any money. I will also not be attending any family events where he is present until he can respect my boundaries. The email was blunt, maybe even harsh, but it felt like I had finally put up a wall that couldn't be scaled. The responses trickled in over the next day. Some relatives told me I was doing the right thing. A few tried to play mediator. And yes, there were a couple of guilt-tripping replies, but I deleted those without answering. Ethan never emailed me directly, but he posted something vague on Facebook about selfish people who let greed ruin families. I didn't respond. I blocked him. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to him since. My life feels quieter now, not free of all family tension, but free of that particular storm. I've put my inheritance into long-term investments and savings, just like I planned. My house is nearly paid off. Sometimes I think about how different things might have been if Ethan had just asked for advice instead of money, or if he'd accepted no the first time. But the reality is, this was never about the house. It was about control, entitlement, and the expectation that family ties mean unquestioning sacrifice. I'm no longer willing to play that role, and I sleep better for it.